All right. Well, welcome. Welcome to Destination Next Theater. I will be your moderator today. My name is McCall McIntyre. I work at a group called Samsung Next as a venture investor. We are an arm of Samsung Electronics and focused on building innovation at Samsung, particularly through developing software and services for them. And again, I'm on the venture arm, so we focus on investing on behalf of that group. What I will kind of overview is the topic that we're going to discuss today in our panel, and that is video advertising, the convergence of traditional TV and digital video. So more detail, how are companies balancing the value and scale of TV audiences and the benefits of digital? Hear how leaders in the space are managing the challenges that come with the convergence of traditional and digital today. And so on the panel, over to my right, we have Gio Punzo, CEO and co-founder of Stream Media, Jay Prasad, Chief Strategy Officer of Video Amp, and Rebecca Dopp of Google. And so what I'm going to do is hand it off to those three to give a brief intro of what they do, and we'll dig into questions right after that.
So thank you, and welcome everybody to the first day of NAB. Exciting to be here. So Stream Media is reinventing content distribution, engagement, and monetization. We're a startup out of Miami, Florida. We work with content providers from radio stations to TV broadcasters, even influencers that are trying to distribute their content, engage the audience, and monetize. And I used to be a live view. Anybody here knows what live view does? Okay, good. So a live view is a backpack. You guys will probably see it around the show, and they transmit live broadcasting using 3G and 4G SIMs. Go ahead.
All right, yep. My name is Jay Prasad from Video Amp. Video Amp is a software and a data company, and we're very much focused on applying data and automating the advertising workflows so that linear TV, OTT, video on demand, mobile, social, all forms of video can be unified for the purposes of just making a lot more efficient monetization possible.
And I'm Rebecca Dopp. Is this working?
Yeah, maybe closer.
Okay, I'm Rebecca Dopp. I work for Google. I've been there about a year and a half. My initial charge was to get the local broadcasters to adopt YouTube TV. And we've done that by and large across the country. And so now I've shifted over to the Google side of the house to really introduce the vast portfolio of Google products to the local broadcasters.
All right, well, thank you, panelists, for being here today. So we're going to start this off with a very provocative, controversial question, and then go through 4 questions, and then after that, we'll take some questions from the audience if we still have time. So the first question is, TV is dead, true or false? Help provide us with your understanding as to why or why not.
Yeah, so I'll take this one. TV is dead. The first screen is dead, right? So watching TV in your house is not the primary screen anymore. Everything is going to multi-channels, multi-platforms, and TV broadcasters need to be, or any content provider needs to be ready for that type of engagement, where users are not watching TV anymore on the traditional TV, but they're watching it on multi-screens.
Yeah, I mean, I think those make nice, sensational headlines and good fodder for conferences, but in essence, now more than ever, TV is video and video is TV. So the rest is just wires and details, right? It's now we're at a time where instead of claiming one version of video is dead, it's now one entire giant market of video that has a lot of different opportunities for consumers, programmers, distributors, and advertisers.
Awesome.
I think it's completely false. I think users are going to find the best possible screen, and they're going to watch the Masters on their phone if they're at a conference or at a wedding, but they're going to watch it on the TV because they want the best possible experience for that moment. So the 2 things that people do more than watch video are sleep and work, and I would argue that they probably do it more than work as well. So I think TV is very much alive.
Yeah, I would agree. So before being at Samsung Next, I worked for a company called Simul Media, which is in the linear TV space. And one thing that we always talked about was when people think back on how much video they actually consume every day, it's usually under the actual amount of time they actually spend in front of the TV screen. And usually it's double that time in reality. So one question I do have is, when we were looking at an investment recently in the TV measurement space, and we were digging deeper into the data, to me it seems more like mobile isn't really eating away a significant chunk of the time you spend on TV and thinking of TV as a platform, but more enabling video consumption during times that wasn't possible before. So would you agree with that statement at all?
Yeah, so looking at the new ways of people watching TV, there's definitely a lot more data, right? So we're gathering so much analytics, big data, AI, and with that data, we need to be able to provide new types of engagement with the end users. So absolutely, in the non-traditional forms of television broadcasting, yes, there's a lot of data. What we do with that data is going to be very important, and how we utilize it is going to be important.
Yeah, I think what you brought up there is an issue of measurement. So consumption is going to continue to fragment and flow towards new types of content, and obviously younger and younger generations have their own way of viewing content, right? I mean, there's a lot of little kids in my family, and they watch everything on demand on an iPad, versus my parents, who still know what time shows are on, and they love their dish satellite. So it becomes a matter of how are you going to reach and how are you going to measure. And you know, our partners at Omnicom Media Group did a research study recently called the Unreachables, and 40% of millennials are not reachable by a single linear GRP on a weekly basis. So if the future of the business for everything in this everything in this hall and beyond, it's going to rely on the ability to understand what their viewing patterns are and how to best serve them content and ads, and then measuring it differently. Without that, then you're going to have siloed markets that are shrinking simultaneously instead of a unified market that can actually raise itself up.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think that's exactly right. And just like we're innovating how we distribute and allow users to consume and curate the content the way that they want to, we need to innovate on how we measure.
So I feel like we've been talking about that for a while, right? Is this idea of innovating, so you're considering over-the-top viewing plus linear viewing, I guess at a person level, right? So on that note, many feel the traditional content owners are moving slowly to adopt the new reality of linear plus OTT viewing capabilities. What is holding the industry back from moving forward and embracing consumer behaviors? We touched on measurement, but are there anything else that we can add to that?
Well, in a lot of our experiences, especially down south, where we have Stream Media has a strong presence in South America, that digital transformation is so challenging from within the broadcasters, the content providers. Making that shift is extremely difficult, and it becomes an issue sometimes in the ability for them to move quickly and adapt to newer technologies that will enable them to really reach where the audience is, which is on multi-screens.
Yeah, I think there's an even more basic business principle that's sort of holding things back. Television broadcasters, from a CPM perspective, have a much higher CPM on linear TV than they do on digital, right? So if you took the average reach for a primetime TV show and divided it by the ad rates, you're going to have a CPM that's significantly higher than maybe the $21 to $23 that you get on OTT and digital. So there's not an incentive to flood the rest of the playback devices until you can get more price parity for what you get from advertisers, and that's understandable. Secondly, from the advertiser's perspective, if you're a company who's been around for more than 75 years and you've been advertising on television, you have 50 plus years of data showing you that when you are in market with X amount of GRPs, your sales are Y. And there's a direct correlation to what you have on television to your bottom line in sales. And that hasn't changed. So until there are other ways for advertisers to measure outcomes more clearly and more transparently, they're going to always be hesitant to completely move away from the GRP equals sales mentality. And then you also have sort of a long-standing currency in Nielsen that plays on that. that both the buyers and the sellers sort of need it to not move that quickly until you can really make that transfer of business in a way that reduces risk. So there are some sort of incentives that make sense, but that is going to hold things back unless the industry as a whole starts to become a little bit more aggressive.
Awesome. Anything to add?
Again, I think that's exactly right. I would say that 75% of their current revenue comes from the traditional space. And they're, at least in my experience, in my discussions with the local broadcasters, they're very much embracing it, but it's got to pay the bills. And it has to make sense. And we can all talk about, growing the pie and making sure that the measurement is there and there's proper attribution. But we need to make sure that the right people are getting credit and getting paid.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, no, a comment on the CPM. I really believe that owning the CPM pricing, owning that experience back to with the advertiser is going to be the key here. And until TV broadcasters or content provider can manage their own CPM pricing, then they're never going to make money. They're just never going to make money. So owning the CPM is going to be the key here.
Yeah, the advantage, the thing about linear, the advantage of linear is the scarcity of inventory, right? When it comes, and that's exactly why they can monetize off the CPM they had.
Right, and digital buyers are used to being able to buy into infinite inventory, right? I mean, if you're a digital buyer, whether it's you're buying on Google, you're buying on Facebook, or you're just buying the long web of programmatic, which most of it is garbage, you're used to prices being lower because you have infinite supply. Television is a scarce commodity, and so they have pricing protection power, and that pricing protection power has not yet extended to digital in a way that the broadcasters and the media companies need them to be at. So I think they very carefully have plans on how they're going to do that. It's just not going to be open the floodgates and hope for the best. There's too much risk for them in that.
So we did mention a lot about measurement and attribution. And so something that I'm more curious about, because it's something I focused on at my last job, is around will the shift to OTT viewing solve TV's measurement problems, especially when we start talking about attribution? I'm a firm believer that a lot of digital's value and why this year it became, in terms of budget spent, the larger medium in which advertising dollars went to, is because of its accountability in some sense, although it does have its flaws. So will bringing OTT into the picture make TV more advanced when it comes to attribution?
It's made it worse in the short term, and it's a big problem. Mainly because OTT is primarily identified by IP address of a television or some kind of device like a Roku or an Apple TV that's plugged in. But IP addresses aren't necessarily reliable, right? Because an entire apartment building or dorm may have a few IP addresses, so then it doesn't really make it attributable to your particular household. So that makes it a little bit more challenging. And then OTT is like digital, right? So technically you should be able to graph a user or a household based on device IDs, cookies that are known to these people, and IP addresses. But then if the IP address isn't necessarily reliable, then that makes it a little bit more challenging. Also, as OTT embraces more things like live streaming, then they're going to be using more stitching for the ads to be inserted, and then that'll look like every user is coming from Utah or wherever the stitch is being implemented. So there are some other things that need to be done in terms of more standardized device ID and ad request identification from OTT, and the IAB actually just came out with something last week. So these are steps in the right direction. But in the short term, OTT has created a problem because it technically should be more like digital, or it could be like addressable TV, because you could put a household-specific ad into one OTT device, but it's not yet really happening.
Yeah, and again, it's for us, and when we work with our customer, it's about owning that data, right? And it's about owning it and then be able to supply the type of advertisement to the end users by understanding the data. So when we provide an OTT end-to-end solution, we're helping our customers finally really understand who's watching them. And that's something that in linear, they were getting a lot of interesting data from Nielsen and the other guys, but now they're actually getting a pulse of the market, which before they couldn't get, and they're able now to bring advertisement in the mix because of that data analytics that they have with the platforms that we provide.
Yeah, listen, I think that the technology is there. We have the data. The challenge is the traditional ways that we have monetized and what advertisers, both on the buy side and the sell side, those metrics that are used to create value don't translate necessarily. So while we have the data, we have the capability of doing it, I think as an industry we need to come together to figure out exactly how we're going to assign value.
Yeah, there's also just historical ways of doing business that are going to have to change, right? Where traditionally buyers and sellers each think they have some kind of information asymmetry, right? Where sellers have an idea of high-performing ad slots and lower-performing ones and how they can increase yield in certain ways. Advertisers now, as they embrace data, right? Most every big marketer has a marketing cloud and a DMP and other things for them to understand who their customers are. If they can apply that technology correctly, they should be able to find undervalued pockets of inventory that trend very well for luxury cars but are not priced at luxury car levels, right? But that's not necessarily going to solve the problem if both sides are sort of still shooting for old historical advantages, because really true information asymmetry really is going to exist with the very large digital platforms like Google and Amazon and Facebook and others that are going to continue to build that information advantage, and there's no way for the traditional marketers or broadcasters to catch up. They just won't. So why not create a more liquid marketplace where you're letting go of some of the historical asymmetry goals and really just pushing more towards how to create more liquidity and then measuring business outcomes? Then both sides will see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, and so to add that, I think domestically in the US, yes, but once we go internationally, what we've noticed is that local is really the new global, right? So the inventory of advertisement that you might get from the Googles and so on, you're not getting it really locally. And what the local broadcasters again, in different parts of the world, if you're in South America, if you're in Europe, they're really searching for local advertisement and data to be able to bring in the advertisement inside the new OTT platforms. So interesting, but I would say that's more of a domestic play rather than international play. I don't know what you think of that.
Yeah, each market has its own way of how the marketplace operates and what they use for data, what they use for measurement, what the roles of advertisers and agencies are. So yeah, there are nuances, but ultimately you have two parts of a marketplace, supply and demand, and that's going to always sort of work itself out into yield curve optimization that each side wants. But what I think for a new market to emerge, then some of the ways in which you used to hold on to thinking I have to do this because this is the way it's always done, that has to start to moderate.
So these are great points, and I want to touch on the local, making advertising more local instead of global, at a global scale. But one question I did want to ask, and it's off script, but will this change, like embracing OTT? Will it be pushed by traditional TV players embracing digital, or will it be the major digital players taking over TV? I'm curious of your thoughts there.
I think there's room for everybody. I really believe that there will be a lot of consumers that have both, and that's what we're seeing. The data that we see in terms of subscribers on YouTube TV, the vast majority of people that are subscribing that have a traditional service are not canceling that traditional service. So that's actually accretive growth for the advertisers. It's accretive growth for our partners, which is really terrific. And then the other half of the subscribers that are coming onto YouTube TV are cord cutters and cord nevers, and so they were never subscribers. And so I don't believe that all of these advances are going to make anything go away. TV isn't dead. When smartphones came out, it didn't mean that telephones went away. It just made this really powerful tool, and it actually made it a much more impactful part of everyone's life. I think that's what's happening right now with TV.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of new players and entrants, right? That in the OTT space, you create your own version of financial news, like a company called Cheddar TV, right? That's sort of like a CNBC for millennials, and they get most of their viewership through live streaming on Twitter, but their app on OTT is also doing very well. A publisher like that wouldn't have had an opportunity to grow if it was not for new platforms like OTT and social live streaming. That said, you have new players that are creating virtual TV services like YouTube TV and then other traditional players like Sony View and Sling and Hulu. But they're all based on partnerships with the traditional studio system, right? Because they all need content. And those traditional studios are often owned by a broadcaster who are now often owned by a traditional cable operator. So the market has gotten very confused, but it's also consolidating at a rapid clip so that there's not going to be the new versus old. They basically are all going to be working together. And then they're going to figure out which are the best products, who has the best distribution, which content pops with what particular audiences, and then you better be crisp at monetizing it, and then you can grow. But yeah, there's almost so much interest in new people coming in that not all of them are going to make it. But it'll be a combination of the new guys plus the traditional people, and then they're going to all sort of have to be co-opetition and see who wins.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I want to make a statement where the content that people watch is not on TV anymore. So analyze that for a second. And traditionals need to start embracing the digital and come up with new business plans, really, for them to target this new audience that is not watching TV on the regular screen anymore.
I think that's right for entertainment, but I think for news, local news, and sports, it's all about live.
All right, this is great. So I have one more question, and after that, we will turn it to the audience. And kind of going more on the kind of OTT enabling global local advertising. Given the continued advancement of OTT, both in its growth and its ability to provide more targeted advertising capabilities at scale, how do you see local broadcasters being impacted, and how will they adapt?
What a great challenge is this been for local broadcasters, right? If they don't adapt, they'll close shop, So the ones that have done, they've embraced the OTT marketplace. And again, OTT, until a year ago, it was all about distributing your content to multi-screens. The biggest challenge is really now of how do you keep the users on your device, on your OTT platform? How do you engage them? And engaging is what? Each user in each part of the world has a completely different way of wanting to be engaged. And then the local guys, after they are now doing OTT, distributing their content, now they're engaging it, how they are monetizing it. And that's where the local advertisements or that relationship that they had with the local advertisement becomes important, but not in programmatic though. Not using programmatic advertisement, but more using their own experience, traditional experience that they had with advertisements, and bringing that where, again, I go back to owning that CPM cost. You have to own it. And for the local broadcasters to survive, they need to own that CPM because they already have that relationship with the brands that they can bring into as advertisers.
Local has a really great opportunity to use OTT as their new platform for addressable television, right? Because addressable is, of course, mainly 100% sold by cable operators, so not like a local affiliate. But with OTT on your own app, if you can figure out how to apply the data correctly, all your local advertisers can have like an interactive ad unit with a store locator that pops up with an offer, and then you click it, and then if you can graph that user to a mobile device, then the local television station now is able to sell cross-screen oriented campaigns. And local broadcasters also can access programmatic in a way that if they need an extra 1 million impressions on mobile that they don't have on their own app, they can use user-based targeting to get on other mobile applications, right? There's 1 million gaming apps that will let anyone access their inventory through programmatic. So now you can do addressable on your OTT, and you can do cross-device campaign optimization into mobile, and you can sell much more impressions than you ever could off of just your own pool of inventory. So I think done right, it creates a huge opportunity for local broadcast.
I think that's right. I also think that local broadcasters have embraced it. The challenge is that the traditional rights matrices with the networks really create a challenge in the new ecosystem. This three-way handshake that has to happen from a rights perspective is something that has to be overcome, and the value chain has been turned on its head, and so it's much more complicated than just wanting to do it. It's wanting to have this three-way partnership and figuring out the future together with companies that in some cases don't have aligned goals.
Great. Thank you guys so much. And so I think I'll turn it to the audience. Any questions for this panel? Let's see. I'm happy to repeat your question too. I'm happy to repeat it if it makes it easier.
All right. Well, in Europe, you guys you're using the Google Fiber technology and putting that into set-top boxes with the distributors. So using double-click TV. Is that something that you guys are planning on rolling out here as well, or is that just using Google Fiber as Google Fiber?
So the question is about Google Fiber rolling out in Europe and whether we're going to take that domestic. I mean, we have Google Fiber here. Right.
I know.
In terms of set-top box technology, we are innovating in a lot of different ways, and we absolutely have that technology. And if folks want to work with us on that technology, I think that's something we're very interested in.
Here. And I'll chat with the mic's on.
Check.
Hi, you hear me? No.
Yeah.
There's something you didn't hear much about, but it's the fact that content providers and social media in general has an advantage over local broadcasters specifically on the cost side. They're getting a free ride on broadband, while broadcasters are saddled with very expensive infrastructure, right? And it just makes it really hard long term to compete against businesses that don't have those costs. And it's true what you said, that the local broadcaster has an inventory constraint advantage over the other medium. But if you just compare basically a free medium versus a very expensive one, it puts broadcasters in a very difficult competitive position. What do you think?
I think from a distribution perspective, that's correct, but content is more expensive than it ever has been, and specifically sports rights are really expensive. So it's really a different business model, and going after those consumers, and hopefully they're duplicative and or incremental, is going to be pretty key. But someone used the term competitor. It was great. It's working together, but actually competitors. I think we're figuring that out in the new ecosystem, but it's definitely not a free ride.
Yeah, and also you have to begin to monetize, right? And there needs to be new ways of monetization. It's not just advertisement. There's got to be new way for you to engage the end users and monetize. And figuring that out, it's in our booth back there. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Trivia games where the end user can actually play and win, and you bring the brands inside the mix. There's different things that we're thinking of. Chats, engagement, and then monetizing through chats. That's another way. Twitch is doing it, for example. So there are new ways, and many of the major broadcasters are afraid of doing that shift, but they are.
Yeah, I think if you take a look at the trends, right, the major networks are trying to have less ads, shorter ads, but more impactful ones that are a part of a more holistic approach, right? So you're going to have integrations on set during the football halftime show. You're going to have like dynamic logos that can be inserted into the middle of the World Cup, even if it's not there in the physical space, but it will appear that way on television. And then you can have extensions to those campaigns on mobile that could have far more engaging things. I think the creativity part of the whole equation sort of gets lost because everyone talks about data and platforms ad nauseum, but it's a really awesome time to be creative because this is the chance where more of them are getting unleashed to be able to just come up with new ways to engage, to not bore, and to not annoy.
Awesome. Well, panel is up, but just summarize kind of the takeaways that I got from the conversation. One was there will be no clear winners in this space when it comes to either major digital players or traditional players. It'll be co-competitive type of effort. Is that the word that was mentioned?
Co-opetition?
Co-opetition. There we go. That's what it was. But the two main hurdles that I heard in terms of seeing the major change when it comes to the business side is measurement. So figuring out how to get measurement to be high quality, especially when it comes to attribution on television. And then secondly, business model. So again, traditional players are really dependent on the scarcity and their CPMs on linear. How will they figure out a way to better monetize both linear plus OTT to be successful in the future? So thank you, Gio, Jay, Rebecca, really appreciate it. And thank you so much to the SPROCKIT team for getting this panel together. Have a great NAB.
Come see us all at SPROCKIT in the back.
Yes.
Oh no.
We should talk a little bit afterwards because our product and stuff like that, and I think they recently conformed partnership.
Let's do that.
StarStar Mobile, what it does is it's a new way of dialing.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right.
so you would go to a phone. So you would dial and then
Raj. Hi.
StarStar, and then you would do I'll just do 444 for example.
Okay.
And so what it does is it's going to play a recorded message. It's going to say thanks for calling StarStar 444.
Right.
Blah 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 blah. And it's the same. We're going to send you a text message.
Okay.
So, and then the call is going to get forwarded to the call center, but I should receive a text message any second now.
Okay. Right.
I don't know why we haven't got it yet.
Because there's a million people on the Wi-Fi.
So, no, I'm not using it. So,
Yeah, I'm not using it.
and then you go into here, and then it opens up the text sends the link, and you open up a visual engagement. It's 100% a marketing tool. So it's a call to
That's
action.
cool.
So
Yeah,
it's,
right?
It's a call to action for bringing traditional to the digital world.
Yeah.
Kind of why I'm on this panel, but
All right.
But yeah, that's what it really does, and it's really very basic.
I
Three
like
different things.
right.
But what we need to do is get adoption. We need help.
That's the key.
We need help. Yeah, we need help getting big brands on it. Audible.
Where are you guys
States,
based?
Fort Lauderdale. Well, we have an office in California and Cleveland as well.
Oh, okay. All right. I worked in
Head office is in Fort Lauderdale.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's 100% control marketing. So it's very basic. But as soon as that person dials that star, it's controlled. Nobody is going to advertise
So
against you.
I'm curious, how did you get access to that functionality of StarStar?
So we formed a partnership with 4 carriers, 4 major carriers. So we manage the registry on behalf of the carriers. So anybody can get a StarStar number as well as us.
Okay. Well, that's cool.
So yeah, I mean, we got to find a way to get the word out to the big brands.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Of course. You guys ready? Share whatever we need to do. So.
Good morning, guys. Can you hear me? Awesome. Well, this is the SPROCKIT session, going digital across TV, mobile, and online channels. My name is Rudy Ellis. I'm the CEO of Switchboard Live. We're a company that makes it really easy for content creators, publishers, brands, anyone big or small, to stream live video to multiple destinations: Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, you name it. And I'm joined by some esteemed colleagues up here. And I love if you guys could just take 30 seconds to give your elevator pitch, talk about your company, and then kind of go from there.
Hi, I'm founder of SureWaves. We enable traditional television to be bought on a very automated fashion. So we bring automation and optimization for television broadcasters so they can sell their inventories in pretty much the same way that digital inventories are being sold. Yeah.
Cool.
My name is Philip Rebentisch. I'm wearing two hats today. I'm the president of American Marketing Association Los Angeles. I'm also the chief storyteller of Got a Story Media, which is a people-based content marketing agency. AMA Los Angeles is one of the largest AMA chapters on the West Coast, and it's an absolute pleasure to be on this panel.
Thanks, Ray. One sec.
No, it's on.
There you go.
It's Tim. I'm Tim Keys. I'm the COO of StarStar Mobile. StarStar Mobile is a new way of dialing. It's a new call to action functionality. You would dial ***, and then any word or any brand name, and then a series of actions would happen from a recorded message, a text message being sent out, and a visual engagement of your brand being sent to that caller. So it's mainly been used today for TV and radio, for brands to have a new way of driving people to their sites and what the call to action is.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So first question here kind of recapping 2017. 2017 was the year digital ad spending finally beat TV. Digital ad spend was about $209 billion worldwide, 40% of the market, and TV brought in about $178 billion. Why do you think 2017 was the year for this explosive growth? Anything, just
Yeah, I'll start.
Go for it.
So, I think 2017 was a year when sharing was much more popular. People are much more popular with using that mobile space. And so I think that people are just more comfortable with that growth and what's happening with that switch and where the ad dollars are going.
Tim?
I actually think along the same lines is a lot of the marketers actually finally learned to actually remarket and retarget their audience, and that's what's really driving the digital marketing side. We specialize in that. That's where we specialize, is bringing people aboard, and that's what's bringing us the ability to take our main growth this year has been in the direct response world, where your average person was to get on the phone, come make a call. Well, with our technology, we send a text message, bring them to the digital world, and we're finding that more people are buying from the text message and then actually talking to the person on the phone. So
awesome. Roger, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think what has happened is that digital media buying has become extremely convenient, very target-oriented, whereas the traditional broadcast television has not caught up with that. It still remains very, very complex to buy, very complex to sell, very long time cycles, and the convenience drives the buyers to go and buy digital. Okay, so that's the gap that the traditional television needs to bridge. And that's where a company like us, we come in.
And Rudy, can I just add one more thing?
Of course, go for it.
I also think that 2017 is when that hockey stick of video usage really started. So one of the panels earlier in the day was talking about the adaptation of video and the second screens, and the television might not be the primary screen anymore because we are on several different screens. So 2017, I think, was the year when video really came into its own, and people were developing more content for digital, specifically for digital, and also with programmatic advertising, finding the right way to place that content, place that ad in the content that you're trying to reach, the people that you're trying to reach.
Were there any specific events that you think were the culmination of this, or if you had to highlight just off the 2017, were there any events where you really saw that convergence really happening?
For me, I would look at social influencers, right? The rise of YouTube, Instagram, obviously on the digital side of things. You just see so much more engagement. In fact, AMA did a panel on social influencers not too long ago, and we talked about the difference between celebrity influencers that might have millions of followers versus smaller, more authentic influencers. So again, I think that has something to do with it, that medium is no longer the new thing. Social influencing is no longer the new platform, and it's matured, and I think that's part of it.
Got it. All right. Thanks, guys. Traditionally, advertising and marketing teams have historically engaged with consumers separately, right? Operating on different teams with their own budgets. What are your thoughts on how this would change moving forward? For the better or worse?
I'll go. You can't be siloed anymore. You absolutely cannot be siloed. If you're at an agency or even internal marketing department where it's a vertical integration where you're only speaking to your marketing teams, that's just not efficient anymore. You have to be cross-platform. And whether that means outsourcing some of those activities to experts, that's fine. But the bottom line is, it's not push messaging anymore. Right? The idea of, and I grew up in the age when there were only 3 channels, right, back in the day. But that was based on push messaging. That we all know that's not it anymore. It's about having a conversation. So internally and externally, you need to make sure that you're communicating with those other platforms to get your marketing message out and to be listening to the consumer.
Tim and Raj, you have anything?
Yeah, I think the way to go will be a unified, the future actually points to where there's going to be a unified interfaces which can buy across cross-platform, across mediums, and a common measurement. So currently the measurement is very different for each of the mediums. Now the time is coming, the measurement is maturing, and a common currency which is going to connect all the different platforms. So the effectiveness can be measured in one go. Today they are in silos, and that creates a big challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I just totally agree that everything is going to one marketing firm, one system for all, TV, radio, digital, print, everything.
Gotcha. All right. So obviously Facebook and Google appeal to advertisers because of their massive audiences and their ability to interact with consumers based on real identities. What are other platforms or destinations or any other players out there in the space that you think are gaining traction or will be gaining traction?
I think you have to look at Amazon.
Interesting.
Amazon has, we all know, obviously, of Amazon.com, but they also have their own network, right? And so I think Amazon is waiting in the wings to be that next third major player. A few minutes ago, I just mentioned the 3 channels back in the day, right? And I think Amazon is completely poised to start having ad-based content and other content within their various brands.
I mean, in Hulu, Netflix, all those guys are coming along. Switch down to SoundCloud, all that stuff is coming along. Whatever the kids are playing with, really these days, is what's going to go there. I mean,
Yeah, the space is pretty much split between Facebook and Google.
Right.
It's very difficult, and I think Amazon could be a serious contender, but it's very difficult for newer players to kind of displace the incumbents for a foreseeable future.
Why? Why do you think that's the case?
Market
share or?
It's market share. And in digital media there is, it's just not that there are not too many players. There's tens of players out there, but it's just that these early birds who came in and they have the dominance, and it's very difficult to displace that today.
It also has to do with ROI, right? Where are you going to get the most value?
Right.
So on Google, which of course we're talking about YouTube as well.
Sure.
Right? So Google, YouTube, and Facebook and Instagram. That's those are the major players, and we all know that. So if you're looking for return on investment, what kind of return are you looking for, right?
Do you think they have like a stronghold on different types of content, whether they're niche content, or do you think there'll be a breakout with maybe some, advertisers are trying to reach a different audience, or are they looking to, reach a different segment on these platforms?
So I've heard that Pinterest is for brand awareness, but Instagram is for sales. So I know a lot of marketers that I speak with in my capacity as AMA president in Los Angeles. People talk about that. Instagram is really to help drive sales. Yes, you can obviously do brand campaigns,
sure,
brand awareness campaigns, but if you're looking for sales, Instagram is one of those key players.
Got it. Tim, anything or no?
Well, I don't really want to be, here selling Star, but I mean, at the end of the day, I think Star Mobile is actually a new channel that's coming through, which 100% controlled marketing.
Please elaborate.
And as companies go along and want more and more control, and not have all their competitors on Google and on YouTube and and Facebook competing against them, Star has the ability to 100% keep that. So as soon as you get the person to dial Star and whatever your brand number is, it's 100% controlled. There's no advertising that anybody else can advertise against you. Whatever you want to do with that customer, you get to do in that period.
Got it. Which is actually a good segue. So more data at advertiser fingertips means the more opportunities for them to measure the effectiveness of engagement, right? So companies need to align how they measure success. How is success measured for both sides of the fence?
I'll start.
Go for it.
So, first of all, you have to decide what kind of campaign are you doing. Is this a brand awareness campaign? Is this a campaign to drive sales? So it starts with that. What measurement tools, what are you trying to measure, right? So as the advertiser or as the agency or who's ever creating that content, obviously you have to know what is your ultimate goal here, right? So for me as a content producer, I love data. I love it when a client comes to me and says, look, this is what the data is saying, because my whole thing with Got a Story Media is speaking and listening to the language of the audience, right? So if you have data that can inform the content producers, okay, this is the profile, this is what we're trying to communicate. As a content guy, I love that because it helps guide me with what and where I need to go.
No, on the flip side, so for the advertisers, like where do you think measures success for them then?
So again, I approach it more from a content creation perspective, but one of the things that I always ask people that are data scientists and data analytics is, how do you share the story to the C-suite of what that data is saying? In other words, you might have reams of data, you might have voluminous data,
sure,
but what is that story telling, and how do you communicate that to the decision makers that need to have that data in order to create the content or whatever that campaign is supposed to be doing?
Yeah, in the realm of television, what's happening is that though the currency is the standard measurements like Nielsen or ComScore, but what is really going to drive the future is that layering of the data, additional sources of data, which are important to the advertiser. Okay, and so basically, there are this scope for technologies which will optimize. While the purchase is happening on one currency and the optimization is happening on another measurement, which is another source of data, and that's where the direction will emerge. So the trick is in being able to use multiple sources of data, use more of data manipulations, more of artificial intelligence to see that predict which secondary audience, which is a tertiary audience, is going to map to the primary audience, and then go after that kind of purchase.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's all about data and how it's going to be used. The consumer is really today looking for someone to not only map what they're looking for, but really to be a concierge and give me the products that I'm really looking for. Because at the end of the day, everybody wants their own concierge.
Sure.
Everybody wants the people to do the work for them, right? That's how the data is going to really help the consumers, but the advertisers are going to have to learn how to properly use the data, not just to market these 50,000 people that were in this area, but how to market the right brown pair of shoes to that one person who wants brown pair of shoes.
And Raj, you mentioned something earlier about that you just wish there was one source of data. I don't think that's ever going to happen.
No.
I mean, it would be great, right? Like in the old days, and still, obviously, we have Nielsen for measuring, TV audience measurement, but it's not the only game in town anymore. And especially in the digital space, you have so many options. And again, that's what it gets back to, having people talk about what is the data really saying, right? And interpreting.
Yeah, I said multiple sources of data, and then one has to correlate them.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
While the seller wants to sell it under one measurement, The buyer wants to buy it another measurement.
Yeah.
So how do you draw the correlation between the two?
And how do they overlap?
Right.
All right, well, I have one more question before we can take some questions from the audience. Kind of changing the topic a bit. So being that I'm an end user, right, I have a great experience. It's key to me. I cut the cord a few years ago and went directly, to OTT providers. Netflix, HBO, seem to be the services that are really, really consistent. What are those? What can other broadcasters learn from those two broadcasters?
Well, I'll start.
Go for it.
If you just look at the variety of content that Netflix is producing. Now, granted, their model is obviously very different than your traditional broadcaster. But still, the variety of content, I can't keep up personally, and I love Netflix, but really, every month they have new content coming out, stuff, I know stuff is going away, but new things are coming on. So I think that's one of the things that that broadcast networks, if they can keep using their other platforms to continually produce other forms of content, I think that's one area, and I'm sure they know that that's what they need to be doing. Not just the primary network stations, but what are they doing on their other platforms? And we all know they're moving into that space.
Yeah.
What comes to mind right now is CBS, right? Launched their new Star Trek show. They did one episode, I believe it was the premiere episode on CBS, and then they moved it to their subscription-only platform. So again, utilizing those other platforms that are out there, they have to do it, and they know it.
But the basic difference between regular TV and Netflix or Hulu and all that stuff is Hulu and Netflix know who you are. They know what you're doing and what you're watching. So they customize everything for you. Where radio, TV, they don't. They just think what the masses or what the Nielsen ratings say, which reality, Nielsen ratings don't really mean anything anymore. It's really about learning and understanding your customers. And TV is in big trouble if they don't find a way to interact with the customers like Hulu does and like Netflix does.
What about live video? You think that these have an impact for these kind of traditional broadcasters as well?
Well, live allows the interaction of people to text in or to chat in and give their voices at the time, but live doesn't allow you to change on the fly either, though, because even though it is live, it is still going to be scripted, what's going to be happening.
Sure.
So yes, they get a little bit more interaction of what's going on, but they still don't know the user's habits.
Well, and I would say that this year with the Olympics, I thought NBC did an incredible job with their cross-platform and multiple screens technology, the way that you could watch the Olympics. It seems like this year was the first year where that really came to fruition, where, hey, what do you want to watch? What do you want to dive into? Okay, well, here are the different options to be able to do that. Not just the cable option, not the primetime, recap in the evening.
Right.
But I thought they did a terrific job this year. So even, when we're talking about live TV, generally we're talking about sports because that's still a very communal thing. Yes, I do DVR some football games, but still, it's not the same, right? It's not the same as watching that
fear
game
of missing
live.
out, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you're always going to have that community element, but you want to make sure you're diversifying onto those other platforms to serve your audience and your community.
Got it. Well, cool. No, did you have anything to add, Raj, or no?
Yeah, I think the television broadcasters are trying to they've realized that what differentiates them is the live content, be it the news or be it the sporty content, and that's what is getting so much more premium amongst the broadcasters.
Is this something obviously domestic or international as well?
This is international. In my country, India, we're seeing that there's tremendous war games going on, how to monopolize sports. Okay, so people are just going over the roof. The broadcasters are going over the roof to monopolize all sports.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, cool. Thank you, guys. I guess if now can we potentially take some questions from the audience? If anyone has any questions specific for any of the panelists, now would be the time. Going once?
I could make some up.
Okay.
Go for it, yeah.
Cool. So I do video production, and I was curious, I see sometimes we try to strive for quality, like making really nice looking videos, but we also see a lot of videos that are kind of quickly put together, using cell phones even, and are they able to find a way to know if, are we wasting our time sometimes to, get the connection, get the return on investment? Should we just be, is there data that is easily accessible to know if we're wasting our time? With, overproduction. Just curious.
I'll start. It comes down to authenticity, What is that consumer going to expect, right? So we've heard that word over and over for the past couple of years, but it is very true. So I think it depends on what are you producing. What kind of content are you creating? And I'll give you a great example. So again, getting back to the social influencer space, I actually know some social influencers that were asked to stop making their photographs look so good because they were so professional looking and so spot on that the audience didn't seem like it was coming from that influencer. So, oh, you brought in a pro to do that. And so I think it depends on the context. What are you trying to do? If you give the audience or the consumer permission to have less quality depending on what you're doing, it is okay. But I think it really comes down to what you're producing.
Got it. Thanks for the question. Anyone else? Oh, please, yeah. To the mic.
Hello, I'm a high school teacher, so I'm viewing this from a different perspective. But with a lot of students that I see nowadays, you know, there's a kid that may go to a game and actually hold up their camera and live stream it. But in one sense, I'm just wondering how much fragmentation may happen with live sports even, unless there's some type of ban on devices or something, because, you know, especially with the technology and the quality of even, you know, our cell phones providing, you know, high definition content. Do you think that will at all play a role? And then two, with high schoolers, even though a lot of stuff is moving digital, at least what I hear from a lot of high schoolers, they're not even seeking out regular platforms like Netflix and Amazon. They're actually underground. You know, platforms.
Tours, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, you know, with the millennial wave coming in, what kind of threat, even with that mentality, with younger generation not even paying for content, what kind of threat do you see?
Looks like it's two there. So Tim, I guess if you want to take part of that.
Sure. I know in the sporting world, with what a lot of them do is from South Florida, so Miami Dolphins and the Florida Panthers and the Marlins all do this, is that they actually kill your cell phone during the game. So it actually doesn't work until the end of the fourth quarter when you're ready to leave. So the cell phone range just doesn't work in the stadiums. So you can't broadcast live. I know that's what they're doing on that side of it. As for the teenagers, I mean, that's what they're doing. I'm very, very close to this right now. My kids went to Douglas School, so we went through all this stuff. So I was able to see in real time all the channels of how they broadcast what was actually going on during the event, way more in advance than any network could get there. And the reason why the MSD Strong is taken off is really because of social media and the network, the way they built it, not just because CNN and David Hodge and Emma talking online. It's really about what the other kids are talking about and putting it around there. And you should see the amount of channels. A lot of these kids have received, you know, I probably know about 10 to 15 kids that now have over 100,000 followers on their Instagram and pages, and Snapchat pages, just because of what they were broadcasting during this event. And that's really how we're going to get our news in the future.
Do you think there should be like a centralized location that would, you know, start for events and so forth to kind of consolidate and have this kind of one viewership for content of a mass event? Do you think that's necessary, or having this, you know, having the platforms and you as the viewer have to go and find that? 'Cause that can always be challenging. Do you think there's a need for that? Either one of you guys, yeah.
You're not going to be able to stop people from creating content. Yeah, you can shut it down in the stadiums, and we all know that, but it's going to be out there. So getting back to your original question, I think it gets back to what kind of user experience are you looking for, right? If you want the highly produced, you know, I have 10 speakers in my living room, right? I still have a big screen. I want that experience. I enjoy that. There are times where I'm just looking at a video on my phone with headphones or whatever, and that's fine. So I think you're not going to be able to stop the creating the content itself. It comes down to what the user's looking for.
Awesome. Well, cool. I think that that about wraps it up. Appreciate you guys for coming to check this out, and I believe there's some additional paneling coming up as well. So thank you for your time.
Yes, 12:30, be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
tell us where we need to be.
Yeah.
My name's Vincent.
Ann, how do you do?
It was fun. Good.
You're
It
a
was fun,
creative
man.
director.
Good. Yeah.
What do you do?
I'm a writer.
What do you write for?
I freelance.
Awesome.
So whoever I always say I always work for the highest bidder, but sometimes I work for the lowest bidder too. So.
I did a lot of I still do freelance. So
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
Well, you first time at NAB, or you've done this before?
No, the last time I came was like 5 years ago, and I spoke on a panel. So this is different. I'm like, oh, I guess I'll just watch panels.
You get to learn a lot too.
Yeah. So. Were you one of the guys who asked a question?
Yeah.
You work in video production.
Yeah.
What do you produce?